I got to tell you, I am feeling, increasingly anxious. I mean, about what's happening with the Delta variant. Just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I spoke with David Wallace Wells for the show Reported that we do on Peacock as well, and he had written a piece that the children were safe all along, and that the children were just simply not that susceptible to the wild type COVID. And there had been really no data just really 3 weeks ago regarding the Delta variant. But this variant is significantly more transmittable. It moves quicker. And the initial reports were that the vaccines were protecting people somewhat from breakthrough infections, but very largely against hospitalization and death. And it still appears that it does it for death. It is less clear, what's happening in terms of hospitalizations, but we are seeing a commensurate rise in hospitalizations and deaths. That is not necessarily the same ratio that we saw back in the peak during January, but we also don't have the same amount of testing going on. And so it's hard it's really hard to know what's going on. This thing is moving so quickly, the Delta variant.
People are less likely to get tested when they're vaccinated.
Much less likely.
So we don't, yeah, right.
There's less opportunities too. I mean, I know just, around Brooklyn, like the places where I would get tested, they're like, well, we closed that one because there's nobody getting tests. And now they're all starting to get booked up again. And it's tricky. People have got to be careful. And people are less, not wearing masks as much. And it's a problem.
Yeah, and the places that are getting hit the hardest are obviously the places with the lowest vaccination rates. I mean, the fact that only 35%, I think that's the figure I wrote down here, 35% of people in Alabama and Mississippi, residents who are eligible, are fully vaccinated. With this Delta variant, I mean, we're going to see an exponential increase in deaths, and we're already up to over 500 on a rolling average. And there was this insane Wall Street Journal piece that came out yesterday, and they profiled people who were vaccine hesitant, including this one woman named Shonda Parrish. She's a nurse. She has cancer. Her father and stepmother died of COVID, and she's a nurse. I'm repeating that. So she's literate when it comes to medical information, refuses to get vaccinated.
She's also presumably working with around sick people.
Yeah.
Who might be a little more susceptible. It's stunning. And we should also say that, we have 70% vaccination rate amongst adults in this country, but it is not fully vaccinated. I think we're still just hovering around, maybe not even quite 50% fully vaccinated yet. And so it's really, it's scary. People have got to just be careful for their sake, for the rest of society's sake. And meanwhile, you got Ron DeSantis down there in Florida, just pretending like none of this is happening. It's really stunning. And Florida now represents 20% of all cases in the country. And again, this thing's moving so fast. When you look at a 14-day average, I would suspect that at one point, the epidemiologists or whomever it is who look at these, who set up these metrics, that it makes more sense to look at a 14-day average to get a sense of what the trend is. They may at one point say, this thing moves so much faster. You only have 3 or 4 days for it to incubate, as opposed to 5 to 11 or whatever it was in the wild type. This thing incubates so much faster that
and multiplies so much faster.
that you may have a more accurate, and I don't know, I'm not a statistician, but that you may have a more accurate picture of what's actually happening with a narrower window, because you're actually, like, 14-day trailing has a significantly distorting impact on where this is headed going forward. But we'll see. But folks should just be conscious and be careful out there. The idea of masking, and particularly if you can get a KN95 mask, you're going into a crowded place. We're already starting to think about what are we going to do about the office here, but I think we're all pretty good about masking up in other environments. But still, it's something to start to think about so that we can avoid, around, I don't know, where are we, like 6 of this? 5, 4? I have no idea.
In terms of
yes, how many times have we been going through? Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, speaking of rounds, I feel like I've been punched in the face multiple times by this virus. So I just, look, I'm luckier than most, but it's just the idea that
worker virus.
Yeah. The idea that we're dealing with, I mean,
yeah, I know.
And the longer that this goes on, people keep saying, I'm seeing when I'm bemoaning people who are unvaccinated or like, I don't even know what to say. They get these, we're trying to convince people. People are like, oh, Darwinism. No, it affects you too, because the longer this is out in the ether, the more it's going to metastasize and become even worse than the Delta variant.
There's a lot more letters in the Greek alphabet.
Than Delta?
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yep. So keep that in mind, folks. Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.